Recording in the car. Here we go. Backing up here. I'm going to talk about basic features of aristocracy. And so this is aristocracy in the ancient world, in the medieval world, anything pre-World War I, really. But the word aristocracy, it's good to start with etymology, and that is aristos and kratos, those two words put together. Aristos means excellent or excellence, and kratos means power. So really with the word aristocracy you get excellent power. So it's really saying, the most excellent are the ones who rule. And so right there you have a problem for the aristocracy, is somehow they need to make it obvious, or even seemingly a priori, to make it natural that they are somehow, your bloodline is somehow blessed or excellent above all others. You're a type. So throughout time, the idea of being an aristocrat came with it a sort of idea of inherent excellence. And so one of the features of different eras and different dominant religions is that this is explained in different ways. An aristocracy, the excellence of an aristocracy can be bloodline related. In other words, you could be descended from a god, a demigod, or a hero. You could be descended from previous king and rulers. You can be ordained. Your family line can be ordained by a god or a previous king, so your family line can sort of be transferred into a higher aristocratic position. Personally, I'm descended from a family, an English family. They were non-nobility. And during the Tudor reign of Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, several members of this family, the Pettus family, were knighted and given a baronet. And a baronet, you could say a baronet itself is actually a barony that is ruled by a new aristocrat, or someone who's not quite an aristocrat. Whereas a barony is, it's ran by an actual bone and blood aristocrat. So some families can be they can be made aristocratic. And so depending on where you are in time and space, that'll be validated in different ways. And of course, this is where religion is so important, because religion, the priestly class or priestly caste even, lends validation, a sort of religious, spiritual validation to the aristocratic lines. So sometimes, in some places, those two classes are completely separate, that being the priest class and the ruler class. In other places, the lines are very blurred. Like in medieval Europe, you might have, higher members of the clergy, cardinals and that sort of thing, counts, actually be aristocratic. And so the higher up you are, there might be some overlap. You might be of noble blood and be a priest, what we might call a high priest, say like a bishop or a cardinal. But in some places like India, and most notably, you have a clear separation between nobility and the priestly caste. So with that out of the way, we have the definition of aristocracy, and we have the problem of proving legitimacy or through excellence of bloodline, excellence of history, excellence of ancestry, excellence of deed. You're somehow inherently excellent. And then we can also look at several other features that seem to pop up with aristocratic lines, problems, whether it's ancient or medieval or something closer to modern. And that is some of the main problems that a king will run into. Now, when we say a king, we're saying a nobleman, but The nobility are their own pool of power, institutions, and people, whereas the king and his court are not always 100% overlapping with the nobility, even though the king is nobility. So in other words, some kings, especially in feudalistic times, a king would have various lords who ran different lands, who the king might only see once in a lifetime, if ever. And that noble in their own land would have their own knights and that sort of thing. And so they might not ever be called upon by the king himself. They might just be protecting their own land and expanding their own borders. Well, when communication is increased, especially during, say, the High Middle Ages, you have closer communication between the king and his lords. And so, as taxation advances, you're now taking, currency has to be available in the population, of course. But as taxation becomes centralized and money is funded to the center, you usually see nobles more intimately connected with the court. And so, one of the genius innovations, perhaps, of Louis XIV, the absolutist ruler of France, is that he created Versailles. And Versailles was genius. It's a location, used to be a sort of a hunting lodge for the royal family, now made into the royal palace. And Versailles, the creation of it, the innovation behind it is genius for many reasons, but I'll just talk about one. And that is Louis XIV wanted more control over the nobility. Now, I said that we're going to talk about different problems that the nobility face, but, that is, one of the biggest problems is the nobility, even though the king is noble himself, or the queen is noble herself. See, the peasants, they can be a problem, of course. They can be murderous. They can chop your head off. They can burn your palace down. They can storm the gates. But usually the real problem for a king is the nobility themselves. Not necessarily foreigners attacking marauders, It's the nobility really create problems. You might be poisoned or assassinated in some other ways. You have noble lines who feel like they want to be a more powerful family than your family, and that their family wants to rule the kingdom. Why should it be that your particular noble line should be ruling the family? And maybe other families will have contested power. Maybe they'll be saying, oh, we are more legitimate than you, or behind your back, different nobles will get together and combine their forces and send them against you to depose your kingship and put someone else on the throne. The nobility can be a big problem. So Louis XIV, one thing Louis XIV does is he is smart. He says basically, if you're a lord and if you rule over sort of control part of France, if the king of France traditionally gives you or your family a certain land to rule over, say Lorraine or some other area of France, then you're not actually going to live on that land. What you're going to do is you're going to live with me at my giant palace. And so all the major nobility and some of the minor nobility of France would live right with the king. They can plot against him, but they're less likely to have any sort of power. And so what Louis XIV does is he basically gets the nobility at his palace in Versailles, at his court, caught up in court politics and basically kissing the French hind end of Louis XIV himself. And so that way Louis XIV really has more control and power over his own land. And so that's a problem. A lot of people think, well, a king or emperor should have total control of their own land. That's what makes them a king. Well, it's not so simple. A couple things to think about in terms of the aristocracy, and it's that, the aristocracy, they have to be legitimized, whether it's religious or through their bloodline. And number two, the real problem is with the nobility. And so you have real problems with the king, with his own nobility. Not foreigners necessarily, not the peasants, but other royal lines. And you get the big contrast of medieval feudalism, where the lords are kind of on their own land and perhaps don't communicate with the king so much, And then contrast that with the absolutist ruler, Louis XIV, who brought the major nobles to his court to grovel at his throne. And so that's what I wanted to say about aristocracy for now. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm pulling up to my destination as we speak. I'm on First Hill, right on the peak of First Hill as I end this little session. This was the location where this little college town first started. And here I am. Good day. Actually, I'm going to keep this running. All right. Here's some wind. Early winter.
Knowing me, I better have a backup.
How are you doing? Sure thing. Really? But not those?
And I've got one like this, but I'm getting it.
There was a 2-tiered plate too.
Really?
Yeah. It should have been by that. We had it yesterday. How are you? Okay.
Why don't you hold it? Because you're not being nice. Just shush.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Hey,
How are you?
pretty good. How are you doing?
Good. There's a guitar.
Yeah, I'm probably good. It's like a little Spanish guitar. This is a good deal on a case, though. Yeah, yeah.
Is this a textbook or regular?
I
I can't really tell when that gets to that type.
don't know.
Looks like
Hardback.
I think it's regular $1. Well, textbooks they charge $2 for in regular hardback.
Oh, do they? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And cookbooks are
I mean,
up
do you?
too. Well, I just charged $1 since I don't
Oh,
know
okay.
for sure. Some you know
Makes
for
it
sure,
even
'cause they'll
$5.
say, like used or whatever.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
This one didn't say much, but there you go.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
You too.